All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, January 13th meeting of the Arlington Redevelopment Board. I'd like to call this meeting to order. My name is Rachel Zemberry. I am the chair of the Redevelopment Board. Would the other members of the board please introduce yourselves?
Steve Revelak.
Eugene Benson.
Shayna Corman Houston.
Ken Lau.
Great, thank you very much. And we also have the director of the Department of Planning and Community Development, Claire Ricker, joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Let's see. So just for everyone who's joining us this evening, I will note that it can sometimes be hard to hear in the back of the room, so I would encourage people to move forward. We will do our best to project. Our first agenda item of business this evening is our annual organizational meeting. Each year, it is the responsibility of the board to elect a chairperson and a vice chairperson. So I will see if there are any nominations for, we'll start with chairperson of the board.
I would like to nominate you, Rachel, if you're willing to do it again.
I think I will, one more year, be willing to do.
I'll second the nomination.
Okay. Any other nominations? And we'll take a vote. All those in favor of re-electing me as chairperson of the board, we will take a roll call vote for that. We'll start with Steve.
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Shayna?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And I accept and thank you all for your support. We'll now take nominations for vice chair.
I'll nominate Ken Lau for vice chair. He'll take another year.
Would you
Yes.
be willing to do so? Okay, great. So is there a motion to approve Ken as vice chair of the board?
So moved.
I thought I just moved.
Oh,
You did move.
second.
Okay, second. Thank you very much. We'll take a vote starting with Steve.
Yes.
Jean.
Yes.
Shayna.
yes.
Ken.
I guess yes.
Okay, and I am a yes as well. Congratulations, Ken.
Thank you. Thank you, please.
Absolutely. We will now move to our second agenda item, which is a review of the meeting minutes. We have two sets of meeting minutes to review this evening. The first is the meeting minutes from the Redevelopment Board Retreat on December 14th, 2024. So we'll see if there are any additions or corrections, starting with Steve.
Not here.
Jean?
None.
Shayna?
None.
Ken?
Yes, I have two.
Okay.
Just give me a minute to call it up.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, on the first page of the meeting minutes, I said, I advise that the rain garden projects are often cost prohibitive according to the town engineer. It's not the rain garden, it's the water retention if we add that to the rain gardens.
Thank you for the clarification.
Because when Mr. Benson was talking about adding tanks to that, that's what I was saying, referring to.
Great.
And then this is just, I asked about the roadway improvements. I was talking more, I guess that's the same thing, falls in the same thing. I guess I'm okay with that. I was talking about the lights and the crosswalk.
Correct,
Right,
the whole
but
intersection.
that's the whole road work, so that's,
Right.
I guess that can cover it. So that, just the first one.
Okay, fantastic. All right, are there any other additions or corrections? Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes from December 14th as amended?
So motioned.
Second.
We'll take a vote, starting with Steve.
Yes.
Jean.
Yes.
Shayna.
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Those meeting minutes have been approved as amended. We'll now move to the meeting minutes from our meeting on December 16th, 2024, and see if there are any additions or corrections, starting with Steve.
Not here.
Jean.
None.
Shayna.
None.
Ken.
None.
And I do not have any either. Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes as submitted?
So motioned.
Second.
We'll take a vote, starting with Steve.
Yes.
Jean.
Yes.
Shayna.
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Those meeting minutes have been approved. Great. So let's move to our third agenda item this evening, which is the public hearing for docket number 3834, 30 Mystic Street. And as I understand it, the applicant has requested a continuance. So I'll turn it over to Director Ricker.
That's correct, thank you. So with regard to the project at 30 Mystic Street, as staff started to review the application, there were a few items that we really need more clarification around. The site is very interesting. It encompasses 2 separate zoning districts and also a small piece of right-of-way in the parking area. And so we did ask the applicant to please add a supplemental narrative as well as a more detailed traffic circulation plan and identification of exterior bike parking, exterior ADA spaces, the loading space. The drawings just needed a little more detail before we wanted to bring it in front of the board. So they've asked for a continuance to the 27th, if that's okay with the board.
Great. We'll see if there's any discussion, starting with Steve.
Yep.
Jean?
No.
Shayna?
No.
Ken?
No.
Great. So is there a motion to continue the public hearing for docket number 3834, 30 Mystic Street to January 27th, 2025?
So motion.
Second.
We'll take a vote, starting with Steve.
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Shayna?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. We will continue the hearing to our next meeting. Let's move to agenda item number 4, which is the public hearing for docket number 3821, 1513 to 1515, and 1517 to 1519 Mass Ave, which is continued from December 2nd, 2024. What I'd like to do is invite the applicant forward, please. As they are relocating, I will just lay out how we will run this continued hearing this evening. So I'll first turn it over to Director Ricker for any notes or clarifications on the revised application. Turn it over to the applicant and the representative for any items that you'd like to highlight for the board. We'll take board questions, open this up for public comment, and then reconvene the board to decide whether we will be able to make a decision this evening. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Director Ricker.
Great, thank you. So this was an application that the board had formally heard and asked for some additional material related to the project, which was provided. We have a revised plan set, a new proposed plot plan, an O&M plan, civil engineering design narrative, lead checklist, and solar assessment, a lighting plan, and a stormwater report. I will note in the planning memo for this project, the bicycle parking, there is a recommendation that the board ask for 2 additional long-term spaces. The project has met the requirements for the bicycle parking, and so the board need not consider asking for an additional 2 spaces unless the board finds some reason that those are necessary. Additionally, this project is seeking to leave the utilities above ground, and so the planning memo or the final decision will reflect that as well, should the board be okay with that.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to the applicant. So if you could introduce yourself, we would love to hear any thoughts you have about the revised application. And we have about 10 minutes devoted to the, up to 10 minutes for the update to the board. I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Well, thank you very much, and good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Once again, for the record, Attorney Matt Eckel with Fletcher Tilton on behalf of the applicant.
Gene Bernstein, Ilya Zanigarowski.
And our project architect may be here by 8 o'clock, so we might be done with some of the fun by then, but Eric Zackerson from Context, if he does arrive and join us. As mentioned, first of all, thank you very much to the board for accommodating us. I know at one point this was a packed agenda, so we're happy to be back before you, and we'll keep it as brief as possible. Director Ricker did bring to the forefront some of the updates, including the solar assessment, the lighting plan, the stormwater report, etc. So a lot of purpose for coming back was to provide that supplemental information. We also did make some changes, slight but design changes more than anything. The project as it stands is still 5 residential units with the 1 commercial unit and 5 parking spaces. We slightly relocated some of the bike parking, so we now have 8 long-term bike parking spaces and a couple short-term out front of what's proposed to be the commercial space. We made some design changes. I guess looking at the site plan up on the screen right now, a couple things just to call to the board's attention. We've located now the 4 street trees. You can see there's additional landscaping plans, which we can get into if we need to in greater detail. But this kind of shows the landscaping we have around 3/4 of the property with the 4 street trees, as well as some landscaping out in front of the building, and then really a nice landscaping buffer around the right side and the rear adjacent to the Minuteman commuter bikeway. We have kept the driveway in the far left position where you can see it, with the 1 accessible parking space and the 4 other parking spaces. On the far left, kind of top left, so to speak, we have our trash and recycling area, which would be contained and screened, but provide easy access for in and out to get the trash and recycling removed when it's done being stored there. To the right of that is a bike shelter with a space for 6 bike spaces. We also have an additional couple spaces in between the residential unit as well as the parking area. In terms of the landscaping, you saw most of this. We still have a private patio for that first floor unit to walk out and use by themselves, and then the rest of the area is going to be dedicated towards common area for all the other units above. We can skip ahead. The floor plan stayed the same, so we still have the 4 units on the second floor. On the roof plan, we identified some vent area, which coincides with the solar assessment. Skipping ahead, we can stop here for a minute because this is a little bit of a significant change. We took to heart the suggestions to look at the overall fenestration as well as the window placement. So the windows, which you can't see as well, actually you can see, excuse me, in the front view, have all been aligned. If you remember last time, there was, we tried to give a little bit more a lack of a symmetry, so to speak, by altering the windows, but we brought them now so they all are kind of lined up. We also really took to heart the idea to separate both the commercial and residential entry from the sprinkler and parking area. So as you look at the far left, that's more of a blank slate to really screen the parking and sprinkler area, and really calls attention to the middle and the right of the first floor with the doors and windows to really let in a lot of natural light, activate that streetscape, and call to attention where the attention should be on the building, not kind of spreading it out throughout the whole building, but focusing on the commercial and residential entry. We did identify some signage as well above each of the separate entries. Again, we have one dedicated residential entry, which brings you into that lobby and provides access to the first floor unit, as well as the staircase up to the second floor. And then kind of right in the middle is where the commercial entrance would be. And again, that area carries to the right side. So the whole kind of middle to right of the first floor is that commercial space, really trying to draw some attention to it. We did shrink also the large bay windows at the second floor at the direction of Mr. Lau. We did still keep them as kind of a prominent feature point, but we did shrink them so they're not quite so contrasting with the doors in between to the decks. Also realizing too that the doors will be recessed, and from the streetscape, you won't really have that one-to-one that you see in these renderings and elevations. So that kind of summarizes there the aesthetic changes to the design. Director Ricker, I guess we can see a couple more slides if there's anything else of note. Here we just identified the band to kind of separate the first and second floor for utilities to carry in between the floors, and just clarify some of those details, and again kind of evened out the window line carrying around the side. Again, those were uneven when you looked at the corner from the side to the front, so we've put those on the same level now. Skipping ahead, this is just some materials which largely stayed the same, just calling out some of the different details here. I think we went over all this. This is relatively similar. Open space calculation here just really identifies the green space around the rear and the right side. Each unit, as I mentioned, has either a patio or a deck, so a little bit of private outdoor green space for each unit. Here we get into more details on the landscaping plan. Again, you can just start to get into the species and see kind of the thought and the care the developers brought in Verdun landscape architecture to really design this out. Of sustainable plants, but also a nice mix to promote the aesthetics, but also long-term viability of the landscaping. And some of the examples of fencing that we might use are permeable pavers. Just the full landscape plan here. Final rendering again, which calls out all the changes here in greater detail. So We did submit a bunch of new information to the board at the request. So if there's any questions on that or any of the design changes, we are happy to take any questions or comments. But again, thank you for having us back in tonight.
Great, thank you so much. Anything else you'd like to add, or we're good?
No, I think that.
Okay, fantastic, wonderful. Thank you again, and thank you for so quickly turning around such a thorough response to the questions that the board posed. I did have a question for you, Claire. If you could go to the plot plan, which I think was just referenced. It's not in this package. It's a separate.
It's a standalone PDF.
Yeah, it's a standalone PDF.
I don't know if I have it.
Okay, well, my question on that, and you could just clarify this most likely as well. On the plot plan, it identifies 2 proposed curb cuts, but everywhere else you're just showing one, a curb cut into the proposed driveway. There's also a proposed curb cut called out in that central area where I believe the entrance to the commercial space is. I'm assuming that that's not correct, but I just want to clarify
That's a carryover
that.
from the original
plan.
design.
Okay.
We had the driveway in the middle.
Okay, great, because there is also shown an existing curb cut to be refilled. So again, just wanted to make sure that's something that we would identify if we're able to approve that this evening, that we would just approve one curb cut as opposed to the 2. My other question for you is to identify, we had discussed that one of the parking spaces should be able to be convertible to an accessible parking space. Do you have that one identified? I apologize if I missed that.
Sure, right in the middle is the dedicated lanes.
The one below the,
Well, technically, the middle lane there would service to the top and the bottom. So
okay,
it's technically
okay,
2,
so you can
depending on
convert
where the
either
ramp
one.
would be. Correct.
Perfect, great. I wanted to make sure that you understood on the facade that window film that counts as a sign. So in the commercial space, just be aware that if you're, once you come in, we won't be approving the specific signage this evening, but once you're ready for the signage application, you need to just be mindful of making sure that the openness that we require is maintained. Even though I know it's a business, you still cannot add window film there without that counting as an additional sign. So I just want to make sure you're aware.
Or window shades, or is that?
You can add shades, but
Just
again,
out of
in a
curiosity.
commercial space, the desire of, and the way that the bylaws are written are such that there is a minimum percentage of transparency into the space. You may see it in other businesses. Some have received special approval because of the type of business they are. Medical marijuana, there are, some daycare specific requirements with regard to privacy, but in the most cases we do not approve that. So I just want to make sure you're aware. I want to cover that this evening, so there's no question later. All right, Ken, any questions or comments?
2. But first of all, I want to say thank you for taking advice about scaling the windows and making it I think it looks a lot
They
better
were
now.
great advice. I agree with you. It does look better.
But your rendering, can you go to this one here? Is that an old rendering?
Pretty much. They just added. They changed I think he scaled the windows. Again, this is like not this is someone that they have in-house that has some,
I realize
rendering, but to get a real rendering to scale and to detail.
No, it's just that
It's gonna take a few months.
you turn the corners and you see the colors, and you see how you have like a band above the windows on the side and a band below the windows of that orangey color.
The wood.
Well, that's the thing, is this rendering picks up a lot of orange, but if you go to the material list,
No, but it's not even close to what's on the elevations. So if you're saying this rendering is old, it doesn't represent the elevations, then I'll just look at the side and front elevations which you have here. It doesn't look. You go this thing here? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, go back to the elevation. That does not look like your rendering.
Ken, I completely understand where you're
Which is
going.
fine. I'm saying
I
this
wish
is
that rendering wasn't even in there.
Which is
because
fine.
I don't think it does it justice.
So you're saying this is accurate right here?
That is those are elevation plans.
Then I am fine with that, okay?
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to, I just want to make sure it's clear what's what. Because when I look at this and then you turn the corner,
Yeah.
and if you look at the other elevation, which is this one here, see how you have this horizontal band
Yes, but
that
they,
separates the commercial space and residential space on the side elevations? That doesn't carry across the front, okay? And I think that might be a good opportunity for a future sign ban or something like that. But also, when you come to that corner, it looks awkward because you see one-sided elevation up vertical, and then one side has a band come across. It has to somehow terminate in the outside corner.
I can agree to disagree because for me, I personally like the differences because it gives it because we're gonna have the same wood in between where the door is. So if we carried the band, I think it would just look really, really too busy. I personally like the differences that this has a side going sideways and then the middle ones are going up and down. I don't think that the rendering, I wish the rendering wasn't there because then maybe you would have had a different opinion on it.
No, I would still have the same opinion
Yeah.
looking at these two elevations, because if you look at the side elevation, show a band right above the windows, and it goes to the corner, onto the left. And then when you go around the corner, the band disappears.
That's right, because we have the same element in between the thing, in between where the the doors are. I get what you're saying.
You're
It's
a
just- it's
builder,
more
right?
of an- yeah.
How do you turn the material at the outside
No,
corner?
it's the corner
You have
detail.
a corner detail.
Yeah, but
We
you
don't,
don't
not
we
in
don't
there.
have it detailed here yet because we don't even know what we're building yet. Technically,
But that's what we have to approve, right? So
you approve the corners. of the
exactly. I mean,
materials?
again, for us to trust that you just know how to build it, that's not everybody that comes in front of us. That's what we're looking at.
You
We're
would hope
looking
that
at
the building
how.
inspector is going to
Building
pick this up
inspectors are
as-
going to review aesthetics. So again, we can work through with you
Yes.
today without having to see every.
But my question
everything
is that
detailed
you're
out.
telling me that I don't know how to build. I'm telling you I could build it like that, where it's
You're
still,
not showing me that you know how to build it. That's what we're
Are we talking
saying.
aesthetically, or are we talking about how to build it?
We're talking aesthetically.
Okay, so aesthetically, I think it looks good, personally.
Okay, we're
I
clearly in
disagree with you.
disagreement.
Okay, and that's what I'm trying to say.
I'm going to say is when you have, because you also have a band above the second floor windows, and you have a band on the lower floor windows, which is fine, okay? But then you look at the front elevation, there's no banding, there's no bands there. Which I kind of like having the bands there go across, because now you're separating it, but and when you walk down that street, you're going to see that corner, and I'm concerned how that's going to look, okay? And that is an issue that I have right here, okay? That I want to wait to see what the rest of my board says, okay? But I'm just telling you what my issues are right now, okay? And then my other smaller issue is the wall between the fire pump station, you know, the little closet you got for the fire pump, and the main entry. If you look at the floor plans, that area, let's see where that is. Yeah,
The sprinkler room?
Yeah, the sprinkler room.
It's right when you first drive into the.
Okay, right here. I would like to see that there's a little pocket that goes in there. I like you leave that wall out, so you actually can see into the garage. This makes it more transparent, okay? So you don't have a big, huge, massive lump right there at the end of the building. So when you go by it, it's open. So if you're in the parking garage and you see outside, and or vice versa, would you feel safer in that garage? Because the garage is open. You know. Also, when you walk by, you can see into the garage where the cars are at. To me, the massing is a little heavy on that side, because you get all windows on one side and you get all walls on the left side.
We had the windows, and then you
I
told
know.
us the
I'm just saying.
polar opposite.
I told you I told you before the window was not required. Just leave it opening. If I had the choice, I would go with the window as opposed to a wall. What I said last time was,
Again, let's not respond to every single one. The board will review, and again, we may or may not all agree.
Yeah,
So just
but these
let
are
each
my
one of the board
opinions.
members talk.
I would prefer to have the window back there or have it all open. And that's it. And those are my two major ones right now as far as aesthetics and what the thing looks like.
And you're not saying a window, you're saying open.
Open.
Correct. So let's just be
No, we had a window
consistent.
before.
I understand, but you said window, so I wanted to clarify
prefer-
your particular
Yes.
preference.
It needs to
Okay.
be open. But if they don't want to open, I say go back and put the window in.
Okay. All right, Steve.
Thank you. Yes, just a few questions. I did notice a discrepancy in the bike parking between the standalone plot plan and the design plan, but it sounds like you're going with the lockers
Yes.
for 6 of the spaces. And the other 2 are just sort of like basically in front of,
There's 2 spots.
right. Was your intention to accommodate larger bikes like a cargo bike? It looks like to me,
It is now.
it looks like that's what you've done, and I wanted to say I commend you for doing that. They're becoming a bit more popular these days, and they don't necessarily fit so well into bikes into lockers for regular commuting bikes. I was reading the storm. Thank you for including the stormwater report. I was, you're achieving a significant runoff, a significant reduction in runoff, which I also thought was commendable. And one last thing, during the last hearing, one of the things that we asked was detail about the locations of mechanical systems, and if you could just talk through that.
I think they're shown.
It's right on the right.
It's right on the right where commercial spaces.
I think maybe the right side of the box is right there.
Straight
Oh,
up.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Nothing further, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Jean.
Thank you, and thank you for all of the changes you made. Just to show that we don't agree on everything, I think the band on the side is fine without having to go around the front. And I think that's a level that we don't need to say yes or no about, but just make suggestions. I think it would be a little better with an open space on the left, but I think it's also fine with a solid wall. I would leave that to your preference on that. The Department of Planning and Community Development memo mentions EV charging stations. Are they on the plans? Because I didn't see them.
They were on the original plan, and that was an oversight on us not to put it on here, but we are planning to have EV charging for either one of every 2 spots, or we're hoping to do one for every spot.
Okay.
But we've been doing that for every one of our developments.
Level 2 chargers?
But what is it? Is it level 2 or is it just the regular? It has to be level 2. Yeah, I believe they are level 2. Yeah.
So at least 2 level 2 chargers. Thanks. Steve mentioned this, but I just want to get a little clarification for myself. The plot plan, which I guess is not up here, shows between the garage and the first floor 4 bicycle parking spaces, but the other plan shows just 2 over there. Which is it going
So
to be?
the plot plan's outdated, so the plot plan doesn't show the bike shelter at all.
Right.
So we have the 6 spaces in the bike shelter at the top left, and then the 2,
2.
which
Okay.
Steve's suggestion can accommodate larger bikes. That was the plan all along.
So the plot plan is not correct in that aspect.
Yeah, and we also added a communal patio to the grill and everything to kind of get more community space there. That's not the plot plan.
I have a question about the lead checklist. It shows only 11 yes and 95 no. Can you explain why you're not sort of getting some more yeses? You could pretty easily, since it's going to have to be an all-electric building. It's going to have solar, not solar ready, but actual solar on the roof. So it looks to me like the LEED checklist is just basically wrong. I don't know what you think about that.
If Eric joins us, our architect, he could assist with this question as well, but we had focused more on kind of the overall principles of the all-electric, the solar, the energy efficiency. So if there's some oversights on the LEED checklist, we apologize, but certainly everything we've represented as energy efficiency and sustainability we're pursuing.
Okay. I just might ask that there be something, assuming you're going to give the permit, that just requires you to submit an update.
Submit an updated.
An updated
So
LEED
when we talk to
checklist.
to Eric, and he can speak to it as well. Basically, the code requirements for the new stretch code are stricter than LEED
Right.
certification.
Right, so that's why this is.
The big concern is investing to the LEED certificate, like going through this process right now.
We're not asking you to get certification.
No.
We just want to see an accurate checklist. That's all.
Right, so again, if he's able to join us, let's put that one in the proverbial parking lot until he gets here, and we can ask that question at that time. If not, I think what we would do is identify some of the areas. To Jean's point, I think you're shortchanging some of the things that could be represented on that list without spending $1 more, right? I think some of the things that, in terms of low emitting material, interior materials, construction waste management, those are things that are just general construction best practice. So we just want to identify what those are and request an updated list, but we're happy to talk with your architect if he joins us before the hearing's over.
And then certainly if we were to get a vote tonight and that would be conditioned, that would certainly be something that
Sure.
we're obviously amenable to.
Okay.
And just to remind me, are these going to be rental or ownership?
Ownership. Besides the commercial, we're gonna own it.
Right, okay. Those are my questions.
Great, thank you, Jean. Shayna?
Just one follow-up on the LEED checklist, which is that the previous stretch code would almost always yield a LEED silver certifiable. So do take a look, because you probably have at least 50 points. Let's see, so I wanted to ask about solar versus solar ready. I think you said that you're planning on solar ready. Is that correct?
We were under the assumption that it's required just for solar ready. So that's why we signed the contract with solar people, and it's solar ready, and that's what they designed us with.
Meaning you're going to put solar on?
Well, yes, I mean, that's the plan, yes. But I don't know how the commitment or none of that works, because what we read is we need to be solar ready.
No, you need to commit to have solar on.
Okay, got it.
Okay. So I couldn't tell from the bike structure. Do the bikes exit out through the garage? Is that an opening in the wall of that garage?
That's the driveway's all
open
over
air.
here.
It's all open air.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only overhang is really over the parking spaces, and that's
Okay.
just.
Great. Let's see. And the recesses in the facade, how deep is that? Is that sort of like balcony depth? Those bays in the front facade.
If you can go back to the plan.
I think it's 60 or 70 square feet, the balcony.
But how deep does that
Right,
end
where,
up being?
for example, you have the recess into the commercial space and the planting kind of jutting into that space.
I'm sorry, I'm not following.
Yeah, you can point it out.
We have two recesses.
Thank you, Rachel.
Commercial space and then to the right.
This recess here, and then the recess that was in question about the openness to the garage. So I think Shayna's asking about the depth here and the depth
Oh,
here.
gotcha. So like the depth of the
Yeah.
balcony, right?
Yeah, that's right. Not exact. Doesn't I don't need to know exactly. You know.
Should be. Looks like 5.5 feet.
Yeah, they're not.
Yeah.
They do have it. I gotta zoom in, and I'm like.
Commercial space a bit deeper, but about 5 feet.
Okay, great. Great. So those are all my questions. I will say the band on the side, my personal opinion is I actually like it just on the sides and not wrapping around the front, but don't have very strong feelings about that. I personally do not like the idea of a window into the garage. Don't love seeing the cars, but again, don't feel like that's necessarily something that I would make a strong recommendation one way or another.
So what we'll do is we'll gain alignment on that, obviously before making any type of a decision this evening on those two topics.
And I think if you look at the landscaping plan, it shows that in front of that
Correct.
window there is a tree, it's landscape, so you wouldn't be looking through anyways.
Right. So that's a smaller planting because I believe that that's situated below so that the canopy runs below your balcony?
Yeah, so
Okay.
like the idea is that the plants are gonna really take that
Yeah.
kind of boringness
Yeah,
look away.
no, I appreciate that. Great. All right, any other questions for the applicant before I open this docket up for public comment? All right, great. So if there are any members of the public who have joined us this evening who would like to speak to this particular application, please raise your hands. Okay, seeing none, we will close public comment and I will turn it back over to the board for discussion. I'll just run through my notes here. So I'm hearing a lot of appreciation for the work that was done between the two hearings and, consistent support for the project, which means it sounds like we can most likely get to a vote this evening. The items that I have here are that we would need to clarify that that there is one curb cut, as is shown on the plans, but contrary to the plot plan, or just note that the plot plan is outdated and that what will be approved will be the plans in the package. We have identified that at least 2 level 2 EV chargers will be included as part of the project. We will request an updated LEED checklist. We also will clarify that this project will include, bless you, solar panels upon completion rather than solar ready, correct, Jean, for the bylaw? And the 2 items that I have that we as a board need to discuss is the openness at the recess adjacent to the parking area on the first floor and the wood horizontal banding on the sides and the either termination detail at the corner or the turning of the corner of that element. Anything else that the board has identified that I should identify in my notes? Okay, I think that I just want to also clarify the relief that this project is seeking, which is the relief from, I believe it's 5.5.2A, the 20-foot setback, and which we had already discussed in prior meetings as something that this board was in favor of. And Claire, please correct me if I'm mistaken here. It's 3.4.4 and condition 8 of our typical conditions in the special permit, which requires the utilities to be underground, but here they are planning on keeping the utilities above ground. So those are the 2 findings that the board would need to identify in a motion this evening. Remove the bike parking. Okay, so
Madam Chair?
yes.
Sorry, I'm not sure if this goes without saying, but we need the special permit for the use as well, for the mixed use.
Correct. Yes, so that's what we would find that this use is appropriate as part of the overall approval of the application, yes. All right, so let's take the two items in question one at a time. The first being the corner detail, the side detailing. So Claire, if you could go to the elevations here. I agree with Shana. Can I do agree that there needs to be a corner detail there in terms of how you terminate that condition, but I would agree that I don't feel that it necessarily needs to turn to the Mass Ave facing facade, but I would like to see a vertical element on either side of both of those facades, which allows that then to properly terminate. Because I think as you look at it from, again, the corner, not having that would be a really challenging condition and one that looks unfinished.
Just
Other
some
thoughts?
sort of corner board.
Yeah.
Yes, a corner board, a vertical corner board.
It's hard to show a corner board on a board like that. But I mean, there has to be a corner there. There's, signs have to be.
We have had people not understand that, and so
Yeah.
that's why we're very clear. I understand that you understand it. Jean?
I agree, let's just put it in the special permit condition.
Yeah, okay. Steve?
Yeah, I think I like the facade as it is without turning the corner.
Ken, would you be okay with that?
But will we have some sort of detail showing how they're going to terminate each thing or something like that? Or?
Yeah, that's what he was saying, that he'd be amenable to having a vertical corner board so that he can terminate.
It doesn't matter what type of sidings they need at the corner. Basically, they see board.
I'd be okay if we made made an administrative approval with Claire, and then if you don't mind sharing that with me,
I was gonna say, yeah.
I'd be okay with that.
Perfect.
I don't want to hold this up anymore. I mean, you guys did a lot of work here, and I appreciate it. But it is a concern of mine. But I have all the faith in you know how to do it. I just want to see it.
Yeah, and again, this isn't about your ability, it's just about challenges we've had in town with folks who haven't understood how to do it. Okay, so for vertical,
Corner treatment, just a plan or an elevation or
Yeah.
something.
okay. And then the next item is the recess into the parking area. So if we could go back to the plan. Thank you, Claire. I'm fine with this as shown. I actually would prefer not to see the cars. That's the direction we've given them previously. And I do like that they have vegetation at both of the recesses here, which I think will, although it's not shown in the elevation, obviously, I think that will work to effectively soften the facade there. That's my opinion. I know you'd like to see the window, so what are the other board members have in mind here? Sheena?
So I was over by the Hanover at Alewife on Cambridge Park Drive the other day, and they treated several different ways in the complex. They have they have glassed-in windows to the ground floor parking garage. They also have open mesh in different places, and the mesh looks better than the windows, but it all looks weird. It just looks weird. It's like you're seeing cars in places that you should not be seeing the cars. I would keep it closed and hidden. But if you are opening it, I wouldn't glass it. I would not do a glass detail.
Okay. Jean?
I agree.
Steve?
Also agreed.
Okay. Can you live with the
Yes.
closed?
I'm not going to
And
go.
then have,
The majority, that was a small decision when I first said it. my original,
Just want to make sure we're giving them clear direction.
yes.
Okay, great. So we will remove that, that item there. Okay, so any other comments before we craft a motion? Okay? Yes.
Sorry to interrupt the potential motion, but I was just hoping to get a little bit of clarity. We did the solar assessment. We fully support solar and had planned to put some in. I'm just curious with the boards. I know there's exceptions or exemptions for if you don't get sun or it's a historical. Now that we're down to 5 units, what we've gotten back from the solar company is borderline financially infeasible. So I'm just curious, I think it's 50% coverage, and I think that's what the solar assessment reflects. But again, we're not opposed to it, but we also don't want it to kill it's home ownership, right? So we're not necessarily even seeing any of these savings. Obviously, you can always pass the cost along to the next person coming, but just curious before a motion's crafted that says, full compliance, just curious if there's any other avenue, whether it's a reduced system or putting some of it up front, or I'm not really sure the right avenue to go. We don't want to see the project fall apart because of solar.
May I?
Please, Gene, I'm just reading the bylaw right now.
You'd have to come back to us and ask for an exemption of some sort.
Okay.
That's pretty much it.
But is that possible to get like
Yes,
financial?
There's a list of,
burden?
there's a list of requirements that cause you to be exempt from it, okay? So you just gotta go with that list and present it back to us saying,
I mean, okay, so let's look at the list, because I don't want them to also
Yeah.
think that they can come back if not. So it's when there's no solar ready zone, so they've identified there is a solar ready zone because it's not shaded for more than 50% of the hours annually. This is not an existing building conversion. It's not in a historic district. It's not a change of use alone. It's not an alteration to the facade. It's not an outdoor, temporary, or signage approval. And it's not inconsistent with the use. So there is no exemption that they currently fall into. Steve?
Well, if it's not in front of me, but I remember the solar diagram having panels on all 6 roof surfaces. 50%, which is our requirement, would be 3 of those.
No, they took the full surface, all the ridges. Like when they subtract it, that's what I thought too. It's only going to be like half a building. So
That's what we're like, oh,
they
that's
did
not bad.
all the like area for installation, for brackets, for ridges. They barely squeezed in 50%, and the price came out to be almost $150,000 to install those panels.
So between 5 units, it's obviously.
And it's not enough for unit owners to truly benefit of energy savings. That's all will all go just into the common space. So justifying, like, hey, you're gonna save down the line, I can't justify a $30,000 price increase.
Except, it's not going to use that much. A lot of it gets sold back to the grid, and clearly the owners on whatever condo documents you have are going to share.
Yeah, their condo fees, I'm sure they'll do savings,
Yeah, there'll definitely be savings.
Yeah, it's just we can't obviously, it doesn't matter on the boards, but from a sale perspective, you're not going to pay $30,000 more for a unit because it has a common solar. It's just we're not there yet. That's where
Well, it doesn't have to be solar panels. It has to be solar energy, so it could be solar hot water on the roof. So you could come back and say, we're going to do solar hot water instead. It doesn't require that be solar electric.
I'm done. I can't wait to research because you learn something new every day, right?
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
it just has to be a solar energy
I got you.
system.
But basically, the way that the bylaws read right now, it doesn't sound like we have any grounds to ask for exemption from.
Based on cost.
And just for the future, it doesn't matter if you're doing a 3 unit or if you're doing a 10 unit, the same.
The footprint of the roof
It's
stays the same.
It's just because you need an environmental design review.
Gotcha.
So
Is it too
one,
late to go to 3 stories and
Shayna, did you have a thought?
well, one thing you might explore with the solar consultant is, so where you run into trouble with a 2-family, for example, is someone has to own the roof, right? And if you've divided up the house, that's a harder question. Here, it's not an existing building yet. You can divide it up any way you want and put it in the condo docs that these 2 units own the roof. And then maybe it becomes more financially feasible if you're selling solar panels to unit 1 and 3, and they take tax credits or whatever. So you might talk to your consultant and see if they have any creative ideas.
Or there's, the lease one where you don't own them, you lease them and you share.
And then you just send that to the condo association.
Well, where you share the cost you share the return on the electricity between, the company that owns the panels that,
Yeah, that's actually a smart
they're
idea.
basically leasing your roof.
Right.
So that's the other way to look at it. And you might be able to swing it financially that way.
Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you.
I
We at least
appreciate
wanted to
it.
ask just because it is, for 5 units, it's a significant investment. And it's a good investment, we just didn't know if there was a mechanism to request 25% instead of 50 or something to lighten that, cost of entry, so to speak,
Right.
at the start. But thank you for that feedback.
Absolutely. Any other questions before we get to crafting a motion?
You're splitting that into 6 units, right?
It's 5 plus commercial.
Yeah, so it's 6.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I thought we lost a unit somewhere, but.
No, we lost a lot in the beginning. Okay. We're not looking to lose any more.
So it's split between 6,
Yes.
not 5. Okay.
Great. So is there a motion from the board to find that this application meets the requirements of environmental design review and provides relief from section 5.5.2A regarding the 20-foot front setback, and provides relief to section 3.4.4 with regard to underground, the requirement for underground utilities. Strikes condition 8 from the list of typical special permit and EDR conditions from the redevelopment board, and has the condition that at least 2 level 2 EV chargers are provided in the parking area, that only 1 curb cut is provided, that an updated lead checklist will be provided, that solar be incorporated on the roof, and that the applicant return to the Department of Planning and Community Development for an administrative approval for the vertical corner treatment of the 2 side elevations. Steve? So moved. Is there a second? Second. Great. We'll take a vote, starting with Steve.
Yes.
Jean.
Yes.
Shayna.
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Congratulations. Thank
Thank
you
you guys
so
so much.
much
I appreciate
for
all
working
your
with the
help.
board. Really excited for your project.
Me too.
Welcome to Arlington.
Yeah, we've been here a few projects. A few first planning books.
Oh, great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for all
You'll
this.
get the decision in about a month.
Do you want us to draft it or you guys?
No, we do it.
Is there
We'll get it.
waiting period?
Yes.
Yes, there is.
7 days?
No.
Why don't we have Director Ricker share the process with the
So
applicants?
we'll work on drafting the decision. It needs to circulate to the board. We have roughly 2 weeks to get it to the clerk. The clerk will then officially stamp it in the office, and then there's a 20-day waiting period after the clerk has it.
So basically, best case scenario, 45 days.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you
Appreciate it.
again,
Have a good
really
rest of your
appreciate
night.
it. Thank you. All right, so with that closes the public hearing for docket number 3821, 1513 to 1513 to 1515 and 1517 to 1519 Mass Ave. So at this time, we'd like to move to agenda number 5, which is the public hearing for docket number 3798, 821 Mass Ave, which is continued from October 21st, 2024. And I'd like to invite the applicants to join us here in front of the room. So similar to our... Good evening. Good evening. Thank you so much both for joining us tonight.
Good morning.
We will take a similar process to our prior hearing in that we will turn it over to Director Rickard to introduce the revisions that have occurred since we last met, and then we'll turn it over to the applicant team for up to 10 minutes to address the board, overviewing the revisions. The board will then ask any clarifying questions, provide initial feedback. We'll open this up for public comment, and then the board will deliberate and decide whether or not we can vote on whether or not we can move this to a vote this evening. Excuse me. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Director Rickard.
Great, thank you so much. So this is an updated application. We've received the updated application for EDR special permit, updated architectural drawings, and an updated sketch model related to this project. I think the most significant change that we've seen here is the addition of one ground floor accessible residential unit as part of the total unit count. It hasn't impacted the site plan, it seems, in any significant way, although there are some minor changes. That's the update for this project. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So at this time, I'd like to turn over to the applicants. So if you could please both introduce yourselves, we'll then turn it over to you.
Good evening, Mary Winstanley O'Connor for Noisfield LLP, and with me is the architect, Mr. Rojas. Before I turn it over to him, I believe the board has my letter with the information requested as to CVS restrictions and the parking ingress and egress. So I will turn it over to Mr. Rojas so he can go through the revisions.
Good evening. Yes, I think the biggest change is the addition of the ground floor accessible unit. The building footprint has not changed, the volume has not changed, and the massing really has not changed. We were able to figure out a way to get that unit in there and still provide the 3 other units with it. The 2 retail units remain. Other changes include, we show, Claire, if you can go to the front elevation. Yeah, I think scroll down maybe. Keep going. Yeah, after that, yeah. Yeah, I don't know if we could zoom in on the front there. But we did locate a signage ban, which is something we were asked to locate. You can see it on the front elevation. We did, one of the biggest changes is the material change. We tried to use a stone veneer, particularly on the side elevations, if you can scroll down further. Right there, the elevation that faces the church. If you give me a second, I just want to bring you a sample board.
Sure.
It looks like it held together. I was very worried. Wow. These things are, glue well.
Yeah, we can move that. Here, why don't I move that table up here for you? Steve's got it. Thank you.
Hopefully this will be good enough. We met with several stone manufacturers. They actually went to look at the church. And we decided that we could do vertical elements that help to be compatible with the vertical elements on the church, and that we could use a material, which is shown on that stone pattern there, that would, while not exactly like the church, but be compatible with it and show some sympathy toward the adjacent site. The rest of the materials are pretty self-explanatory. These are the fins that stick out. One of the other comments or one of the other changes was to maybe use those fins in a more comprehensive way in other elevations or in other parts of the building. And Claire, if you could scroll up again, right there, up a little more, no, yeah, that one, the front elevation. You can see on the right-hand side of it, we've now added one of those fins where the building juts out, where it wasn't there before. And I think that it's trying to tie all the elevations together with the materials. The other thing that we did is, and you can kind of see it here, we were told to look at the windows and not have them just be punched and have lintels or surrounds. We're now providing lintels and sills, potentially surrounds. If you go to the side elevation again, clear all the way down. All those windows that you see there have lintels and sills. That would be this stone material here. It's actually a precast, that material there. And we were asked about the height of the trellises related to the solar panels. The height of the bottom of the trellis above the roof, the actual walking roof surface, is 8 feet. The solar panel providers have told us that installation, they put another surface beneath the solar panel, so there's really nothing to access. There would be cables coming down on one of the posts to, the energy collector. But other than that, really not accessible. They don't think it's a problem. And we do have 50% of the area. Even with the modified roof plan, we still have 50% of the roof area in solar panel. Other than that, we changed a couple of entryways, a couple of site paths in order to access those entryways. We have handicap parking very close to the entrance to that accessible unit. We have a electric vehicle charging station in the parking lot, and we've changed all the fences. I know there was an issue before. We've changed all the fences to 6-foot solid wood fences as we were requesting. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Let's start with Steve.
I did have a number of questions, and you answered most of them in your presentation. Great. So thank you for that. Tell me a little bit about the decision to add the fourth unit. I didn't catch this at first because the application actually still says 3. So I would request that be updated. But
Actually, this one says, I thought we said we changed it to 4. The new impact statement.
Oh, you're right. It's on the impact statement, but the actual application.
On this sheet, it has 4.
Oh.
And the dimensional table.
Well, maybe I have an old copy, but mine says 3. Anyway, it's 4. So, but please tell me about that.
There's a 1-bedroom accessible unit on the first floor. It has 2 means of egress. It's going to be a nice unit. It's very open, which is a function of accessibility as well. All the features, kitchen, baths, obviously, every room designed for accessible use. And then the other units, instead of the back unit being a 3-story kind of townhouse unit, the ground floor is the accessible unit, and then the upper 2 floors, floor 2 and 3 of that back portion, is a 2-story unit on its own. The 2 front units that kind of you enter off of Mass Ave pretty much remain the same. They lose a little square footage, as does the retail space, in order to accommodate the accessible unit, but not a lot. It was kind of interesting that we could get it in there and still feel like the units aren't cramped or undersized. So,
Okay, and these will be rental units?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you. Jean?
On the application, go to the second page of the new application. Does it still show a floor area ratio maximum of 1.0? Should be the second page.
is that this one?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so that remains incorrect.
Yes, it remains.
Incorrect. The floor area ratio is,
Now, this was done by the surveyor, so I'll try to interpret.
well, the surveyor was wrong because the minimum or max required for zoning is not 1. It's 3 for mixed use of 20,000 square feet or less, and 2 for greater. So I just point that out because there is this error in the application, although you're obviously
We're well below any of
apparently
that. Yeah.
well below it, but there should have been a page showing us how you
The
calculate it.
calculation. Katie can get that from the surveyor.
We can do. And we'll, if you're saying that the
Yep.
minimum or maximum required by zoning is 3?
Two or 3 depending on the size, but yes, you're not gonna have any problem, but you were supposed to give us how you calculate.
Okay, that wasn't,
And,
we will get that.
Which
from the
specific section, just so I can put it in the notes,
Dimensional table.
to the entire dimensional?
It's the dimensional and parking information table.
Thank you.
And my other question is, there was some discussion last time about consideration for an EV charging station.
There is one.
Where will it be?
It's, Claire, if we can go to the site plan, go to the, keep going up. Right here is good. It's gonna be in the parking, in between the 2 parking spaces. There is a site plan that shows it. Here's the accessible parking space, here's the entrance, and there'll be an EV charging station right there.
All right, yeah, I didn't see it on the site.
I think it's on the other site plan. I'm sorry if it wasn't on this one.
Okay. All right, so we,
But it's absolutely part of our plan.
okay. Those are all my questions.
Great, thank you. Shayna?
I think there. Right there. Electric vehicle charging
Okay,
station.
thank you. I hadn't seen that.
So most of my questions have been addressed. I would just flag the dimensional table as Jean did. It looks to me like some of the items contemplate the combined CVS and other site, and some of them contemplate just the housing portion of the site, and so it's pretty convoluted.
I agree, it's hard to understand at some level. We were asked to include the entire site in the calculation, which is why the surveyor did it this way. But I understand that some of the numbers look like they relate only to this building, and some numbers look like they relate to the entire property.
Right. Well, so they do. They go back and forth, and I do understand that that the nature of the property is such that the dimensional table is going to seem problematic in places or seem counterintuitive in places, but there were a few items that the parking count, for example, seemed to reflect. Did not seem to reflect what you intended it to reflect. I'd just ask you to take another look at the entire dimensional table and make sure that
parking, just so I understand, that the existing lot, including the 10 spaces dedicated to this piece of the lot, is 73 according to survey, and it remains 70.
Yeah. Here, I'm going to open up the table and identify and read to you some of the things that I had flagged earlier as confusing to me. So Jean mentioned floor area ratio. I think height would be useful to call out where you're talking about what, because there will be multiple buildings on the site, and it's not clear, it's not clear which building you're talking about. Bicycle parking. It would just be helpful if you take a look at the entire dimensional table. Make sure that it reflects what you think it should reflect. It may be useful in one or two places to identify this is the whole site. This is what it would be if it were just the housing portion of the site.
We'll definitely do that. And just in terms of the bicycle parking, the existing is 5 short-term and 5 long-term, according to the surveyor on CPS. Yep. We're adding 3 short-term and 6 long-term, which is why you get to 8 to 11.
Okay.
We could break it down. I suppose you could, on some of these dimensions, give 2 dimensions, one for the CVS building and one for the proposed building.
I think that would be helpful on some of these dimensions. On some of them, it doesn't matter. Side yard setback doesn't matter. That's sort of clear what the side yard is. But on some of them, it's a very different project depending on how it's articulated.
This is a unique site, so unfortunately that means we need a unique approach to making sure that it's clear what is related to the full site versus what's related to this particular portion of the site.
That's
Okay, great.
Yeah.
That was all.
Great, thank you. Kim?
This is not going to be the bad boy here. Essentially what you did here is add a mason veneer to some of your wall sections. Well, at least step back. Okay, I like contemporary architecture. Okay, I have no problem with that. I just don't see this fitting appropriately right in Mass Ave right now, where it is. And I thought we gave, maybe not clear enough, I don't know, opinions of how it didn't quite relate to anything around the neighborhood there, with the church, with even CVS. It looks like it's something that's just plopped in there. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't fit appropriately. Either in scale or material. I mean, I realize you picked this stone to mimic the church, but I think it's not really doing it for me right now. I'm not sure what the rest of the board feels like or thinks of, but when I look at this project here, it doesn't fit in there well. And aesthetically, I don't know how else to explain it. The fins that you've added doesn't really help, in my opinion. I don't know, when I look at this, I look at the scale of the church, it doesn't relate. When I look at this, I look at the scale of the CVS, it doesn't help. When I look at what's across the street with the shops there, it doesn't, there's no rhythm to this thing here. And I don't know, Rich, you might have a better way of saying than I have. I just feel very uncomfortable with this thing right now.
My challenge is that I'm still struggling to understand what this building looks like because the renderings don't match the elevations. And they don't. So you're rendering, you added this additional volume on the, as I'm looking at this building from Mass Ave. Claire, can we go to, I don't want to step it.
Please.
Ask me a question that I'm trying to answer the question. Okay.
Please.
On A03, right, you added this section, this with the vertical articulation on the right side of the building. I don't see that on the cover sheet in the renderings at all. If you go to the cover sheet, and those are really our only renderings other than the study between the 3 and 5 story.
That,
Where am I?
that is rendered. The building sticks out and that's that band.
With the horizontal fenestration here,
Right there.
or not fenestration, but the articulation. So that's supposed to be vertical.
That, right there. And it's not horizontal, it's shown as it's shown on the,
No, you have a vertical
yep, it's this
element,
material.
but it's shown as horizontal on this rendering. It is.
Let's take a look at it.
I'm reading it right now. And in some cases, you have stone articulated in the center bay, but in other cases, you don't. The stone is not the right scale or, the kind of rusticated finish. I mean, that's definitely more akin to either a single-family residential property or with all of there's so many building materials here that there's so much movement in that particular product, which I'm very familiar with. But they don't work together. Especially where you have this very regular geometric shape coming from the aluminum panels, which are the gray, correct? And then what should be the vertical elements, which are shown as horizontal in the wood. It's hard to understand where it's coming from and where this architecturally aligns along Mass Ave. And again, to Ken's point, the last project we saw, it was a modern articulation of a more traditional project, but it was definitely very modern. But it came together. This one is still, it's a series of shapes. Would you say it's not coming together as a facade yet? And there's the materials are taking it further, I think, from where we were before.
I also agree with what you're saying about the elevations and the renderings don't really sort of jive a little bit right now. I agree with Rachel. I mean, if you look at the front elevation there, you have the stone going all the way up to the top floor, but then you look at the rendering, you don't have any stone up there.
Well, no, you can't see it because it's blocked by the fin. If you go to the other elevation.
Go to the top floor.
Go to the top.
Go to the top floor, and you see that right next to the trellis.
No, we'll scroll down. on that page, scroll, if you,
No, oops, stay right there. That's exactly what I'm talking about. On that page right there.
Yep, zoom in on that. It's not shown in the center. It's up
it's because of
above.
the angle.
It's up
you know,
above.
Right here.
Oh, there.
Use the front
Yeah.
elevation right there.
Yeah.
And this thing, I mean, they're not jiving right now, okay? And it's very awkward where you have everything mushed everywhere. I don't,
When you
usually I'm not
start-
lost for words, but
Yeah.
this one has me kind of stumped a little bit.
So for example, when you have stone, stone encases a volume. But we have it applied just on the side here. It doesn't turn the corner at all. And then we have, Ken, if you could just point to the corner here, right? It's not encasing any type of volume right now. It's just something that's stuck on the front. So
We tried to define it that way on the lower level, if you notice, where it does turn the corner.
You have it a little bit here, okay?
Yeah, it is supposed to turn. Yeah, I understand.
Want to keep going?
I don't know what to say.
Okay. I mean, there are some other challenges, again, just in trying to understand what's going on in the drawing. So I think we have a sign band. So, where are my notes? What's the depth of the sign band? I think you show a sign band on A03. The elevation on page L05 shows full transom windows, but A03 shows, I think, shorter
There it
transom
is.
windows. So that's the correct one?
That's correct.
Okay. What is the depth, the height of the sign band?
I don't have a scale, you know.
So that's something, again, I don't know that it's big enough that it's actually going to be useful as a sign band from the street. I just need to know what the size is, because it's hard from the overall
We
scale of the
can provide
building.
dimensions. That's
Okay, so that's one item.
And you said
You know,
it's not
on
on A05? Could we go to A05?
L05,
L05.
I think that was above Claire. I don't remember the coordinator. I can pull it up.
Oh, there, that one?
Yeah, that.
Right, because that's purely a shadow study. That sheet, those two sheets are shadow studies related to the exact same volume, and we did that for the
So
prior.
these are no longer accurate, right? I would throw them in an appendix. It's
I
we're trying to read the set of drawings.
I understand.
It's confusing.
It was purely done for that shadow study.
Okay.
And it was the same one we submitted before. The volume didn't change. It didn't seem like we needed to change that. Should have changed it.
Okay. Let me see what else here. Talked about the stone. You know, we have, can you go back to the cover sheet, the rendering, please? So can you zoom in on the top here? You know, we've got a cornice, and it looks like I'm assuming that the materials don't continue up above the cornice. The cornice probably is the top of the parapet.
The parapet actually does continue above that cornice line, but the materials don't have to. It could just be part of the same cornice material.
Yeah, I mean, we would definitely need to clean that up.
Right now, the corner shape up there right now, when I look at it, it's really massive, and it just,
What, the cornice?
yes.
Yeah, it feels out of scale.
You know, it just doesn't, I don't know.
That's a good comment.
And I agree with you, Richard. I think the materials that, the planes that extend up past through the cornice, doesn't have to be the same material. It doesn't have to be the same material below it. It actually, no one's ever can see that at the same time.
Yeah.
And it makes it look very awkward right now, because it looks like it's planes, float planes. If you just either clad it with the coaxial material or just get rid of it. Where do you get the fins from? The idea of the fins?
We really felt like orienting the balconies south on Mass Ave was the way to do it. And we felt that the fins would help provide privacy, honestly, to the balconies. That's what that's about, is so that they're not open to each other, that they actually do provide a sense of privacy to each individual apartment building. That was the logic there. Yeah.
I think that's my real awkwardness about the fins being.
We could work on that, yeah.
Okay, it just.
Can I
Please, Jean,
Help.
go ahead.
sort of say a couple of things? Yeah, I agree about the fins. If you just wanted to make sure that each one of the apartments had privacy, you wouldn't need the fin on the north side, you just need the one in the center. And yet it seems as if the fin on the south side disappeared, where one would expect to see another fin if you were really trying to give people privacy. And, usually they don't use fins like that, they just use walls on the balconies. My problem with this is the same problem that I had last time, which is I think it doesn't relate to the architecture of the existing buildings. And functionally, visually, it doesn't work where it's located. And I sort of give you some credit for the stone, but it's like putting stone on a modern building. I don't think it fixes what the problem was with the building. But, so I agree with my two colleagues on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, if the stone is a nod to the church, using the stone in a larger field where it does create volume, and perhaps, again, you can pay homage to the coloration, which is, I think, what you were doing here. That's it's in, looking at the church, it's, this is a very different, very, I would almost call it kind of suburban, articulation, this really deep, the small scale, I would almost go with a much smoother limestone, the Ariscraft limestone, or again, if you're, but then I would significantly reduce the amount of the aluminum panel that you have on the building, right? I think you need to pick a direction and then really use the other as accent. You have two really strong, really opposing architectural facade elements right now, and they're fighting each other. Plus the wooden fins. So we have three, and again, you can have multiple accents that support each other, but I think right now the metal panel and the stone, they're at odds with each other, and neither one is coming out ahead. They're just.
Madam Chair, I think I'm hearing from Mr. Lau and Mr. Benson that they don't like that architecture in and of itself, not just the issue of the surfaces. Is that correct?
I don't think that's correct. I think it's the way it's clad
Okay.
is
Do you agree with that?
Is a big problem at the moment.
No, it's not the architecture, no, the temporary architecture. I'm not have issues with that. It's how it's carried out.
Okay.
Okay, and I just, I think if you just would take another look at it.
Obviously, we will.
because if forced to vote on tonight, I would not, I can't really support this right now, okay?
Steve, yeah, I'd love your,
Yeah, I do agree that it's a little busy, and I think I'm sort of seeing, okay, there's the dark railings and that sort of thing, but there's basically three different materials or colors. You have the stone, you have, I guess, cementation sideboard, which is sort of the blue.
The grayish, yeah.
Yep, and then you have the wood.
The metal wood finish.
The metal wood finish. I'd kind of like to see that drop down to 2. If, like, removing the metal wood, even for me, just getting rid of the metal wood finish and using some combination of the other 2, I feel that would be better.
That's fair statement.
Shana?
I think all my colleagues have said what I would want to say.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is open this up for public comment, and then we'll reconvene as a board and provide you with a summary of the feedback. Okay, so if anyone this evening has joined us to participate in public comment, if you could please raise your hand. Okay, so what I will ask anyone who's speaking this evening to do is to please introduce yourself by your first and last name and address, and you will have up to 2 minutes to address the board. So if I could ask you, please come to the front of the room when you're addressing the board. And you can have a seat right over here.
Hi, my name is Marina Popova. I live at 255 Ridge Street.
And I'm so sorry, if you could please project as much as you can so that the folks in the back can hear you, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. My name is Marina Popova. I live at 255 Ridge Street, and I came here to comment on this project, which you probably already heard from me about. It's about, I don't see anything here again about the 100-year-old pine that is right at the corner, close to the corner of this lot. And I just wanted to again mention that there's already 450 people that are asking you to please consider that tree as a historical artifact and something that certainly the Arlington Center can benefit from. And 450 people, if you could just imagine them over here, and that's quite a lot of, residents from Arlington that are really, really very, interested in saving this tree. And I just wanted to mention that to accommodate that, it's really not that much of an effort. Just again shift a little bit closer to CVS as you did in the previous plan. It's the same footprint, everything, except for the shift. And then, you could have the tree saved, and we'd have a nice buffer between this building and the church. Okay, that's it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else joining us this evening who wishes to speak? Okay, please, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Peter Bloom. I live at 15 Jason Terrace. I appreciate the board's efforts to try and eke out some aesthetic improvements to this. I look at this and I can't stop thinking about how much relief preserving that Austrian pine tree would allow for the view that otherwise is going to be presented to people every day. I think if I passed by this building in lots of other locations, I wouldn't give it a second thought. But when I know what it's replacing, it pains me to see it, especially without that tree, to take my attention away from it. And it pains me to think about how that's going to contrast with the neighborhood that surrounds it. I think it would have been a nice gesture, an uncharacteristically generous gesture for the developer to find a way to preserve the tree as a gesture to the neighborhood and the people who pass by every day. For what they've been subjected to for the last 12 years, watching this property be degraded. So I imagine it's probably beyond their imagination to do that, but I still would encourage them to consider trying to find a way to incorporate that tree as a goodwill gesture to the neighborhood. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else joining us this evening who would like to speak? All right. With that, we will close public comment and turn discussion back to the board. So I want to make sure that we give the applicant some clear direction as they move forward. So a couple things that we have identified this evening. We need to see an updated application that includes an update to the full dimensional table, specifically identify where the entire CVS site versus the Atwood building are referenced, and in some cases you may need to show both side by side. Specifically, some of the areas that were highlighted were the floor area ratio, the height, bicycle parking, but the full dimensional table needs to be updated. And then we have the building articulation. So reducing the number of materials or identifying a primary material is one. Taking another look at the building architecture relative to the adjacent properties, and again, whether that's roof line, whether that's the way that the building pushes and pulls in terms of the volume of the facade, whether that's removing the fins and instead of using a screening element or some other element between the balconies. Those were are there other suggestions that the board wants to make sure that we capture?
I think as we mentioned before last time, was like a hierarchy of scale. Right now, when you look at the mass of the whole thing, that's why when I asked you earlier what the fins were for, you said that, just to control sight lines. I was hoping you could say something about it broke down the scale and you're breaking it down to smaller chunks, and we were going to use that. So I would like you to look at it that way there. We get it down to maybe it's 3 bays or 2 bays, or has a certain rhythm going back the other way. As we had talked before, you had your windows on the church that has a certain rhythm to it. Maybe I'm not saying you have to match the arch windows or anything, but you pick up sort of a rhythm, or there's a certain rhythm across the street where all the little one-story shops are along there, or the rhythm that you have for the storefronts and the colonnade on the CVS. You sort of got to use that, something like that. Okay, right now it doesn't seem to talk to any of that stuff. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I think that the other thing that I'd ask you to look at as well is that this building is very much oriented in terms of the way it's designed. It's very much the primary facade clearly is Mass Ave, but I think you really need to think about the facade that faces the church as an equally prominent facade. When you're driving down Mass Ave, the church is set so far back that this really looks extremely secondary, and it's going to be just as visible, if not more visible, when you think about the length of time you spend in your car or walking down Mass Ave and how prominent that corner is. So I think really thinking about how, that's why to me the area where the stone and the metal panel meet but don't wrap is, I'm just having such a hard time with that, because you have to really think of this building and that corner as your primary view there. And I think
corner lot almost.
Yeah, exactly. Any other? And I'd like to know when you come back the height of the sign band, please.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Steve, anything else?
No.
Jean?
No.
Sheena? Kim?
We did talk last time about moving all the mechanical equipment goes underground before, I'm assuming you moved it up top, right?
I'm sorry? Yes, all the AC equipment got moved up to the roof. Yeah, it's no longer on site.
Thank you.
Is it possible to set up a sidebar meeting with
Yes,
staff and
Absolutely.
Mr. Rao to
Yep.
work through this design? Because I think we can achieve what you're after. I just would rather try that than to, keep coming back.
yes, we can definitely set up an interim meeting, and we could have no more than 2 redevelopment board members meet with you. So I think what we can do, let's set up a time for a next date for the hearing.
Yeah.
And then if we can work with Director Ricker, and Ken can make himself available, or I can make myself
Yes.
available.
Just go
one of
through
us.
Claire, though.
Yeah, but you'll need to go
I
through
think very efficient.
Claire to set that up. Okay, so let's look at our calendar.
So I do want to point out that we have potential dates, February 24th, March 10th, March 24th for ARB public hearings related to warrant articles.
Yep, we'll still also need to do hearings those evenings.
Roger.
Yeah. So the 27th of January will be too soon. So we have February 3rd.
Okay.
Is it the 10th? Do I have it wrong in my calendar?
Meeting dates the first 2 months of the year to avoid the holidays. Too soon.
I think
I
March
don't even
10th
have them on my
sounds about
calendar.
right.
March 10th.
March 10th? Okay. All right.
Do you want me? Because I went down.
Okay, so,
Because that'll give us time to meet in between and to
Yes.
produce and send it. ahead of
correct.
time.
Perfect. All right, so is there a motion to continue docket number 3821 for docket 3798 for 821 Massachusetts Avenue to March 10th, 2025?
So motion.
Second.
We'll take a vote, starting with Steve,
Yes.
Jean,
Yes.
Shayna,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So the next item on our agenda is the public hearing for the public hearing for docket number 3348, which was the original hearing for 821 to 837 Massachusetts Avenue. What I would suggest to the board, this was opened so that we can amend the special permit under which the CVS was originally permitted. So I would ask that the board make a motion to continue docket number 3348 to May 10th.
March 10th.
Excuse me, thank you, March 10th, 2025 as well. Is there any discussion? All right, is there a motion?
So motion.
Second.
We'll take a vote, starting with Steve.
Yes.
Jean.
Yes.
Shayna.
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Thank you very much. Okay, so docket number 3348 has been continued as well to March 10th, 2025. All right, does anyone need a quick break?
Fine.
Good? Okay, great. So let's go ahead and move to agenda item number 7, which is the discussion of 2025 annual town meeting warrant articles. We will review the memo from the Department of Planning and Community Development so that everyone understands we will not be holding any hearings this evening. This is just a discussion amongst the board as to which warrant articles we would like to advance to creating the warrant article and reviewing and voting upon, including on the warrant in our meeting on January 27th. hearings for any articles that do become voted on to go on the warrant on the 27th, then we'll go to full hearings in March and April, just so that everyone's clear on the process. Okay, so Claire, I will turn it over to you to discuss the memo that was created by the department.
Great. So staff and I worked on this memo to better to better research and study some of the items that were brought up, many of the items that were brought up at the ARB retreat for potential warrant articles that the ARB may take up for town meeting in this next year. We've organized the memo in terms of which items are high priority, medium, meaning yes, we should probably advance these to town meeting this year. Medium priority, which means at the discretion of the board, we could certainly advance any of those warrant article potential topics, and then a lower priority, which would mean we would be looking to push those items out to town meeting 2026 as they require further study. So we start with the amendments related to ADUs that have been informed by the state. The state has passed legislation allowing ADUs in all districts that will also allow single-family development. The staff has determined, at least insofar as ADUs are concerned, we already permit ADUs in all residential and business zoning districts, so there are only minor changes that are required to comply with the state's law. Mainly, we will need to eliminate the owner occupancy requirement and amend section 5.10.2.b, parens 1D, to allow by special permit more than one ADU per lot in a single-family zoning district. But the ARB should discuss whether to extend that provision to all zoning districts that permit ADUs. This was a conversation that was led by Assistant Director Sarah Suarez, and she may have some more information related to at least the ADUs. Second, there was a conversation, the board asked staff to look at amending or eliminating the B1 zoning district.
Sorry. I thought for discussion this evening that it would be good to take these one by one if the board is amenable, unless you would like just to run through the whole list, but I think we need to make some progress on these, especially anything that we're planning on moving forward. So if that works for you, Claire, I don't mean to cut you off, but I will note that it is almost 9:20 now. We have until 10 o'clock, so we do need to be succinct and decisive when we are providing feedback for these. That would be my request, which is why I discussed putting these in some sort of ordering so that we could at least make some progress, at least on some of these highest priority items that we had identified from the retreat. So let's start with ADUs. We obviously need to craft this into the warrant article language between now and the 27th. Any disagreement with moving the accessory dwelling unit amendments forward, and what are the items that I believe that the item that the board had the most discussion about in the retreat was about the ADU proximity to the property line, specifically around existing garages from our meeting notes. So that's something that I think I propose we talk about. Jean?
Yeah, that's the one question that I have, and the one that I'm not sure about yet. And I don't quite understand how, and maybe someone can explain why the garages make a big difference in this. I knew you were going to answer.
Steve, please go ahead.
So the ADU bylaw requires a special permit for an ADU that is within 6 feet of a property line. And a lot of the old garages are less than 6 feet from the property line. Roughly, I'm trying to remember from somebody, from whether, I don't remember if it was Sarah or what, the ZBA chair, but out of 10 ADUs that we've permitted, roughly half of them have gone before the ZBA because of the lot line issue.
Because they're on top of garages or because they're freestanding?
A freestanding garage within 6 feet of a property line.
No, they're a freestanding ADU within 6 feet.
Well,
Their conversion of a garage.
conversion of a
Right,
garage.
this is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to understand.
Yes.
So it is a big current, it is a provision that is currently widely used today.
So we could just limit this change to conversion of an existing building as opposed to allowing
New construction.
new construction, right? I'm just thinking through our options here. I'm not expressing an
Well, gee,
opinion for one.
let's say you
over
build a garage this year, and then a couple of years later, you convert that garage into, now it's no longer new. It's converting an existing garage. So
Seems unlikely people are gonna do that and spend all the money to do it.
well, if someone's gonna buy a brand new property, knowing that they're gonna retire there, they might do that. They might say, okay, I'll put a garage
No,
right here.
they'll go get the special permit. It's not like they can't do it. They just have to go get a special permit at that point.
But again, these are pre-existing non-conforming conditions. These are
Well,
not.
not necessarily non-conforming. A garage can be built right up to the lot line if it's of a certain type of construction, basically
Right.
masonry.
Non-combustible.
Yeah. And this was when we met with Inspector Champa. I got the impression that the building code can accommodate these sort of things. Like if you build something right on the lot line, you can't put fenestration on the wall that's facing the lot line. So it seems like there's not a building code reason for this.
Is there any difference between having a one-story garage right on somebody else's property line and having a two-story high ADU or an ADU on top of a garage right on somebody's property line?
So in terms of,
Privacy, for example?
well, in terms of just like, the garage can be so many feet from the property line. And if you were to go, you do masonry construction, you build it right up to the property line. If you wanted to go up, you would have to meet whatever, you'd have to do building code, whatever they say.
You need a
whatever
special
code.
permit for that if you go up to a second floor. I think 20 feet is the highest you can go with a single story.
Well, you can do 2 stories or 20 feet.
I think I don't want to get into it right now, but I think it's 1 story. Unless if you do 2 stories, you need a special permit, or you need some sort of variance for it if you're up along there, because it's really meant for a detached structure that's less than 20 feet.
So why do we think some people don't like the idea of allowing an ADU right up to the property line without a special permit? What's the objection?
They don't want neighbors that close to their property line.
That's what I think, right?
Yes.
It's one thing to have a garage and another thing perhaps to have neighbors there.
Yeah, the part that I struggle with is, the state's ADU law is, the legislature, it seems like they want communities to make it easier to build these things. And, prohibiting an ADU within, someone from converting a garage that's close to the property line to an ADU by right would in our case, would be making it more difficult. I think that goes against the spirit of the law, of what the legislature passed.
Agree with that.
So the distinction is between conversion and new construction, so you could allow conversion right on the same footprint, but if it were new construction, you would have to either maintain the 6 feet or go get a special permit.
Yeah, I mean, that's a
Could we write, so we have hearings to have on this.
Right,
Is it possible to write the warrant article such that this is what we can continue discussing? So I think that's what I want to identify tonight. Can we write this warrant article such that we have the space to involve the town in the hearing that will determine ultimately whether or not we move forward with conversions or all structures?
And I think we, in addition to, one other thing to consider are, the special permit requirement for large additions.
Yep.
So the way, and I'm sort of channeling the AG's decision on our MBTA community zoning, where they said, well, we see you have an inland wetland district and it's got a special permit requirement. You can't use that to create a special permit requirement for your multifamily district. So we have a provision in the bylaw that requires a special permit for additions of 750 square feet or more outside of the building footprint. But if one is building an ADU and adds a 750 square foot addition in order to do that, to me that seems like a similar situation where you're taking something that should be allowed by right, but then finding another way to create a special permit requirement for it. Although, as long as we say what we do specifically in the main motion so that the AG can look at it and understand that I'm happy with going either way.
So let's talk through what sections of the code would need to be referenced in this main motion, because the warrant article language, so that we have the flexibility in the main motion to identify that, because that's really what we need to work through with the department right now. So we need to reference section 5.10.2 C and B. I'm just moving to that section right now. So we could really just identify to modify section 5.10.2 to clarify the special permit requirements or standards.
Yeah, and I'd also include section 2 definitions.
Okay.
Because the state regs have the notion of a protected use ADU, and we don't have, we might need to introduce that concept.
Yep.
We might also want to include section 542B6.
542B6.
I remember that.
He's a magician.
How do I remember that? It's like one of the most popular cases to go before the ZBA.
Okay, so section 2, section 5.10.2, and section 5.4.2B6. Or take any reaction related there too.
Yep.
Okay. Jean.
What about the section on ADUs? I don't remember the number.
ADUs, that's 5.10.2. That's the whole section. Yeah. Okay. So let's start with that. And again, between now and the 27th, I think, once we identify this short list, we'll each go through and identify anything, we have time, not a lot of time, but time between now and the 27th to make any modifications to these as well. Okay? Do you have everything you need? Okay, great. Let's move to amend or eliminate the B1 zoning districts.
So staff looked at B1 zoning. We identified 123 parcels in town that are currently zoned B1 business neighborhood. Mostly they run along Mass Ave, the whole extent of the town, and we have mapped each of these parcels in the included maps. B1 parcels represent about 22% of Arlington's business districts. Staff is recommending B1 parcels potentially be rezoned as B2A, which allows for taller height and increased floor area ratio and will provide greater flexibility. B2A also includes the relative dimensional requirements given the overall width of the right-of-way that the parcel sits on, which may also serve to control dimensionally some of these, were we to rezone of B2A development.
This is a silly question. Well, I was curious as to the motivation for B2A rather than B2. Because B2 is described as smaller businesses and pedestrian oriented, and B2A is larger businesses where people mostly arrive by car.
Interesting. I think ultimately it was the additional dimensional requirement as it relates to the right-of-way that we found somewhat compelling, so that you could justify the size of the development based on the size of the street in front. But given that most of them are on Mass Ave, I think it would really only be dictated by the width of the right-of-way of Mass Ave in front of these parcels.
Okay.
Jean?
What about the B1 parcels that aren't on Mass Ave? What should happen to them?
I think there are not many of them. I think you have in the map identified.
Right.
There are several that are
Right, but I'm just
right there in
wondering,
Arlington Center.
do we recommend changing them to B2A, or do we recommend keeping them as B1? Because, some of
The
them...
Chestnut Street that makes sense to me to move them to B2A.
But Central Street, as an example.
Let me pull those up.
Water Street, Central Street, there may be places. I think, I like this idea because we've talked about it a lot, but I think it's time to get a little more fine-grained about it, and that there are probably some bordering some of the narrower streets that should be looked at to see whether they would be more appropriate being retained as B1 rather than move to B2A. And I haven't thought through what all of them are because I haven't really had a chance to start walking the map and seeing what each one of the parcels are. But there's some on Water Street, there's some on Center Street, there are a few on Mystic Street or Jason Street or Pleasant Street, where it's worth taking a look, I think, and seeing, which is the better way to go with those. So I like the general concept, but now I think we need to get down to the level of, does that make sense for these particular parcels?
And Claire, did you confirm, I believe that we can identify that we will rezone parcels, but we do not as part of the warrant article language, we do not need to include the final list. That can be, because I know that was something, for example, during all of the hearings for MBT communities, we were able to fine tune that list and still post and make sure that we had the.
I believe that's still the case. I think the warrant article can be more general language. The main motion would have to be specific as to which parcels were included.
Correct.
Or excluded.
And then we would just need to, I think for the 27th, what would be helpful is to have an outline of the process, the timeline.
Sure.
To make sure that appropriate notice, et cetera, would be able to be identified in terms of the abutters and et cetera, while, Jean, to your point, the substreets are reviewed, those parcels that are currently in the B1 district.
This change would also require us to make a map amendment.
A map amendment too.
Yes.
So that would need to be included in the language to adjust the zoning map.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
I agree with you, what you said there. I walked, let's say, 3/4 of all the sites. This was a good map organization for me. Good job. I think there's only a couple of instances that brings up some concern that you bring up. That's the one on Mystic and the one over at It's back. Yeah, but it's surrounded with other B3s and around it. The only area it's worried about is the R2 ones right behind that. It's on whatever between Swan and Court Street. That one there. That's the one I saw that was maybe issues, but I think we talked about it a little later on.
Yeah, we do need to talk about it. I just didn't want us to do a blanket change without discussing whether there are some that didn't fit into.
I think the majority of them are very.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So are we good on what we need to do for the 27th here? Just to create the language for the rezoning of multiple lots, and again, those will be defined later, and to make a map change at this time as well. Okay. Next, we have revising combined duplicate sections. I think, Jean, this is the one that you had been, is it this one or the one below that you had been working on with the staff?
Yes.
Where's that? Oh, you're here. Hi.
She walked in. Yes, Marissa did a very nice first draft. I gave her back some comments on it. These are the two sections that are almost completely duplicate, except there's one subsection in each of them that's not duplicated in the other, and it's a good opportunity to also make them look more like zoning bylaw and not like, sort of prose paragraphs. So that's the other thing to do. But the other piece, and it didn't come up today when we had the Atwood House in front of us, is how do we understand this bylaw, because we don't all have the same understanding. And I think it would be helpful when we're going to, get rid of the duplications to try to figure out what we want it to mean.
Okay. Perfect. So, is that something that you and Marissa are currently working on, the warrant article language? I know you're working on the main motion.
We were working on the main motion. Right. Do you have a warrant article? Me neither.
Okay. So, it's from that main motion really creating the warrant article. So that covers the next two items on this list here. Okay.
So is Marissa going to do a first draft?
Well, I think for all of these, we're going to need to work with the Department of Planning Community Development, and I think what I'd like to do is identify a member of the Redevelopment Board who can.
There will be a successor to this memo that shows, that at least talks about the language of the warrant article and, more specifically.
Right. For example, I would like to see if Steve wanted to continue with the ADU. You've been working with the ADU discussion,
yeah,
right?
And I'm happy to continue.
Okay, great. The B1 districts will identify, who is going to work to create that warrant article language. And I'm happy to work with you on that based on the MBTA communities warrant article language we had to create. Jean, you've been working with Marissa, so I think it makes sense for you to continue on these two. And then the next is the Inland Wetland District deletion. So they did want to move forward with that this year.
Yes.
So that is nothing that the Redevelopment Board needs to do. You would be able to come to the Redevelopment Board with that on the 27th.
Yes.
Okay, that is a clear item.
And they're going to show up.
I have made it absolutely clear to the chair of the Conservation Commission, Environmental Plan and Both, that you two and the Building Commission would need to be there the night that this is taken up by town meeting.
Okay.
Great. The next two, let's start with the first one, the definition of lot coverage. We have suggestions from Christian Klein. I don't believe in his memo he gave us warrant article language. He gave us the main motion suggested language.
Correct.
So we would need to draft that. Claire, is that something that you could work with Christian Klein
Yeah.
on?
The warrant article language.
Yep. And then parking was the parking in residential districts, and this was specific to when 2 curb cuts are requested, amending the findings, correct?
Well, there's a bit more to it.
Okay,
So it's, it's a minor rewrite of 6110A in general.
Yes.
It's the general, residential parking requirements. I really like the main motion. I may have a friendly amendment or two, but I think this is an improvement.
great.
Yeah, let me,
Please go ahead, Jean.
I was going to email or call Christian and didn't do either because I had some questions about his intention of part of it and whether there were going to be some unintended consequences or not, or whether, we even like one of them. One of them, I think, had to do with when you had a corner lot, which we had recently, you could allow parking in the setback from one of the 2 corners,
Right.
which we don't allow now. So it's
Right.
it's a very substantive change, and I think it's worth having a larger discussion about that when we get to it.
Yeah, I mean, we're recalling my time on the ZBA, where one of the side effects of this is what we refer to as driveway modes, where it goes all the way around the building. This is actually kind of similar to Medford's, where Medford, they approach things a little differently, where rather than each property having 2 front yards, one of the yards is a side yard, but it has to have a front yard setback, which you are allowed to park there.
But we don't allow it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That part of
But
it
we
is a
can
very
write,
substantive
we can
change.
write the warrant article language without
Yes,
having
we can.
finalized that. So I think that's what I want to get to tonight. And if Steve or Jean, either one of you wants to work with Christian and Claire on this, we would just need to identify that tonight ahead of the meeting on the 27th.
We'll do that.
Okay,
I was just responding to Steve saying he liked it, to say, I'm not
That's
sure
fair.
I like it.
that's fair.
Well, I like it, and I'm sure.
Okay. So the next group, rezoning the church properties to R1. Is this something we feel is important for us to take up this year, given the other substantive
I'll
items
push
we
it back.
have? Other thoughts? Ken would push this back.
I would also push it back.
Okay. Jean?
It would be very helpful to know if any of the churches are considering closing or selling, because if they are, then it might make sense to look at this. Otherwise, I think this would be a really good thing to include in the master plan update review.
Yeah.
Just from traffic circulation and visitation patterns. Churches are sort of like performance venues in a sense, where you have a bunch of people come, they stay, they leave, which is not a use that would typically be associated with a single-family residential
Right.
district.
Shayna, any concerns with pushing this to 2026?
No, but I do think 2026 is,
Okay, has to be 2026. Underlined. Okay. And then the next one should have been on the high list. My apologies. I'm actually the one who gave Claire this. These designations. That's on me. We had discussed, and the ZBA chair agreed that we do need to amend, I think it's section 3.4.2A is the section that we need to identify, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And is there anyone who would like to work with Claire on the language of this section?
I can do it.
Jean? Okay.
Marissa's working on this as well, so.
And Marissa, perfect. Okay, next, let's come back to the MBTA communities because I think it's going to be our last big discussion item. Let's go to the renting of up to 3 rooms, and I think Steve, you had a discussion with Director Champa.
Yeah, I mean, I think the staff memo summarized it adequately. Yeah, I don't have strong feelings about pursuing it this year or sometime the next.
Okay, so this could be 2026 as well. A comprehensive review of open space requirements. I think, Claire, your recommendation was to advance to 2026?
That's correct.
Okay. So also remember in 2026, we have at a minimum Arlington Heights, if not also East Arlington Business District. But again, we'll give ourselves plenty of time. Open space, cemetery rezoning, it seemed like there was not, they were receptive to exploring, but not necessarily fully on board with this.
Can I ask a question about that since I was not at the meeting with the cemetery commissioners? Do you know if it was presented to them as rezoning as open space or rezoning by creating a new category known as cemeteries?
I believe both were put on the table, and there was little interest in either, unfortunately.
Okay.
Okay, and then the budget request will need to go to 2026 since that window for 2025 has closed. Cannabis social consumption establishments, we're just not there yet with state law.
Correct.
So this one is not yet ready. I just want to run through these others. The artist housing, it appears that ACAC has updated their standards and guidelines so that there's no action required from this board here. And then the liquor control laws, my understanding is the select board is taking up 2 recommendations for bylaw changes.
Well, these changes don't necessarily need
and they don't need to go to town.
Bylaw.
That's right, that's what it was.
Yeah, they don't need to go to town meeting.
Right. So that we will find an update to after they conclude their meeting.
Yes. What department?
Did we miss that one?
Well, we didn't miss it here, but I remember us talking about that.
Looking at the residential transportation demand management requirements, correct? The list of exemptions for residential. You're right. That was the other one. So, I mean, that is an easy one to write warrant article language for, which is to amend that section of the bylaw or take any action related thereto. Okay. And we did say that we would do that one this year. I think that that's an easy one to do this year. Okay, so parking, residential, TDM, findings. And is there anyone that would like to take up the writing of that one? Or I can do that one with you.
We can do it together.
Okay, Claire and RZ. Okay. So looking at all of, we'll go back now to the potential extending MBTA communities to select residential properties originally excluded on Mass Ave in East Arlington. I think this is fairly substantial to try and do for 2025 town meeting, and one of the topics that was discussed at the Arlington Heights, the working group for the Arlington Heights Business District zoning was whether or not the departments and that group felt that also looking at East Arlington for 2026 was feasible if a similar group was established in the very near future for East Arlington, as opposed to moving, having that community need to wait until 2027. So I wanted to see the board's feeling about moving forward with what was originally put on the table at the retreat if those two business districts were taken up concurrently. I think the concern was about pushing East Arlington to 2027 and not being able to address it in 2026 as was originally identified.
That was my concern.
Right.
Is there enough staff coverage? I mean, no, not staff. Is there enough board coverage for that right now?
So I'm currently working with the Arlington Heights Business District Group. We would need somebody from the board to, and again, I could see these moving. There are a lot of similarities.
No, I see more, but I just wanted to
Yeah.
have commitment or something that does that.
Well, if you need a body in East Arlington, I happen to live there.
I was gonna say, I also live in East Arlington, we can.
I mean, you asked me to help out with
Yes,
Heights.
yes, perfect.
But does it help me, does that not do that then, or?
So there's probably there's probably some consistency needed to be working on both in parallel. I can imagine that there's probably more similar about the two than will wind up being different about the two, even though there will be idiosyncrasies to each of the different business communities.
So
So I think consistency, if there's
me and you are working on Heights, and
Heights.
Steve and
you,
me?
if you're the consistent
Okay.
person between the two is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Does that work for you?
Shana wanted to.
Shane is on it, I'm okay.
Or you and
Right, so
Steve take
I
East.
can't be on both, but I would be happy to be on
Okay.
East.
So
Shana and Steve.
the staff can be the connection.
Glenn Diggins also said he'd do both. So
Yes.
There's a little bit of continuity there.
So that would be great if we could get both of those to town meeting in
Yeah.
spring of 2026. That would be terrific.
Okay.
A lot of work.
A lot of work.
I remember MBTA, it was a lot of work.
So if I can pitch another idea to the board.
You have nine
This
minutes.
could be 2027. I was looking at this map and, thinking that, we had left off a lot of parcels on Mass Ave because they were in the Heights Business District.
Yes.
Or East Arlington or whatever. Well, what about Broadway?
It's a separate process.
It would be a separate process,
But
but
there is one, right? Going on for Broadway now?
Excuse me.
There's some sort of a working group going on currently for Broadway.
Related to Broadway, what we've, the movement that we've made is to, we were awarded $1 million to reimagine Broadway right away, that whole corridor in terms of infrastructure. We do not, as far as I know, there's not a specific group that is managed by staff that is looking at, redevelopment specifically on Broadway.
That's Barbara's group?
So Steve's right, Broadway in 2026.
Partners they did the design competition.
Okay.
Great. Okay, so I just want to run through what we identified for 2025 and for 2026 to make sure that there's nothing that we potentially wanted to push that we still want to try and do this year. So we have accessory dwelling unit amendments to coincide with state requirements. Leaning towards amending, but I think we'll write the language for amending the B1 zoning districts rather than eliminate. Revise and combine duplicate sections.
Well, you're moving a lot of parcels technically from B1 to B2A, so it's not something new.
Correct, right. It's
It's rezoning.
It's rezone, yeah.
Rezoning and changing the map for a lot of parcels, not amending B1.
correct. So we'll just we'll change, thank you for that clarification. We'll change the titling there. Revise and combine duplicate sections, screening and buffers. Jean, you're working on that one, and then amending section 5.3.21A1. which will be two separate. And we'll make sure that those are put in the correct order we'll just need to work on the ordering of that on the warrant, right? Because you want to revise and combine and then.
We're gonna eliminate one of the two.
Right, and then amend the one that's left.
Yes,
Yes.
there'll be one remaining.
Right. The inland wetland district deletion, I'm taking care of that with the conservation. Yeah. Okay, definition of lot coverage, parking in residential districts. The other one for 2025 that I have is change the EDR applicability for homes abutting the Minuteman Bikeway. And then for 2020.
Wait.
Yep. And parking.
Right, transportation demand management.
Thank you. What page did I have that on?
It wasn't done.
Yes, parking,
TDM.
change the residential TDM guidelines. All right, and then for 2026, we have rezone church properties that are currently zoned R1, Arlington Heights Business District, and East Arlington Business Districts. Explore the removal of special permit requirements for renting of up to 3 rooms in residential districts. Revisit open space requirements comprehensively, open space and cemetery rezoning, and budget request for shared resource for signage and vacant storefront enforcement. So that's just the 2 business districts and the open space requirements will be quite a bit for 2026. Are the church properties, do we have the bandwidth for the church properties in 2026 as well, or do we think that that's not as heavy of a lift?
I don't want to say it's only 26 properties, but I think it's something that we could certainly progress, get it to fund.
How many of them are near, sort of proximate to the business districts that we're looking at anyway?
Several, I think that the thing that I found the most interesting was that these are very large parcels.
Yes.
And often have, some of these smaller ones are all associated with the large parcel as well. And generally it's like some accessory use or something related to the church. I think, we looked a lot at, or we thought a lot about Poets Corner and what it might have been like to get out ahead of that one in terms of, getting zoning in place. And that's, there are quite a few that are close to some of the business districts. I'd have to look at the maps and study it a little more closely, but most of them.
Okay. Any thoughts, any concerns about how these have been allocated? Kim, Shayna, Jean?
Great.
Steve?
What's that?
All right, feel like we have a plan? Okay. 2 weeks. All right. With that concludes agenda item number 7. We'll now move to agenda item number 8, which is open forum this evening. So for anyone who is with us this evening who would like to speak at open forum, if you could please raise your hand. Please. And again, I'd ask you to please come to the front, introduce yourself by first, last name, and address, and you will have up to 2 minutes to address the board.
Peter Bloom, 15 Jason Terrace still. I'm wondering if there's any ability to shut off the ventilation system during meetings, because it's thunderous back there. And I couldn't hear most of what you were saying up here.
So
I know it could come up as well.
Even up close, it's hard.
So I'm going to again address this, and I apologize at the beginning of every single meeting for this. We have the town has not been able to, unfortunately, adjust the HVAC system in order to make this a better audio experience. And I apologize, there's nothing that this board can do. This is the space that we've been allocated, and this is the situation that we're dealing with, and we try and project. If at any time you can't hear, please let me know. I can project a lot louder, and if I forget to, I apologize, again, at the outset of every meeting. So. And again, I invite you to come join us in the front as you can.
Is it my imagination, or is it perhaps quieter on that side of the room? Because I mean, I can definitely hear it here.
It's challenging on both sides. We've set up over there, but yes.
Set up over here?
Yeah, we've tried several different arrangements. So point is taken, and we will definitely make that part of the record. So
okay,
thank you very much.
Yeah, Peter, we don't like it either.
No. Yeah. Anybody else? Again, ACMi does not have the ability to provide those to us. Again, we've tried all the things, and I really do wish it was a better audio experience. But this is what's been made available to the board. Anyone else this evening? All right, with that, we will close open forum, and I will open agenda item number 9, which is new business. Any new business?
No new business at this time.
Okay, I just have one item. Marissa did send me a note identifying that now that the updates for the zoning bylaw have been approved by the AG's office, if anyone does prefer a hard copy of the zoning bylaws, we can provide that for any member of the board. If you're using it electronically, it has been, all of the changes have been updated already. So please just let the department know if you need a hard copy of the zoning bylaws.
PDF would be great.
On PDF?
It's on the website, I got it.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay, then never mind.
Yeah. Great. Any other board members? Steve?
Yeah, so I have 2 pieces of new business.
Okay.
So 2 years ago, Arlington Town Meeting authorized our select board to send a home rule petition to the legislature to remove a state law that was enacted in the mid-70s that prohibited the MBTA from putting a train station or parking facility in Arlington Center. Basically, it's so many yards from Arlington Catholic High School. Sometime between Christmas and New Year's, Governor Healy signed that into law, so it is now legal for the T to build a transit facility in Arlington Center.
For what that's worth.
There's still another law on the books that has to be removed.
There is still another law from the books. It's chapter something or other from the Acts of 1980, where it's 15 paragraphs of legal boundary definitions for easements, and then a paragraph that says the T shall not be permitted to study the extension of the red line along the Lexington Railroad right-of-way.
Wow, they really belt and suspendered that one.
Yeah, they really did.
Okay.
So, new business item number 2. One of my bits of recreational reading has been Boston's ADU guidebook. Mm-hmm. It's a really, they did a really nice job. The book is organized in terms of just general design ideas along 3 different lot sizes: small, medium, and large. Medium is 40 to 60 square feet or 40 to 60 feet of frontage, and large is 60 or more, which is the overwhelming part of Arlington. So, while we can't exactly go through and cross out Boston and write Arlington, it is, I think, a useful reference.
Great.
Maybe we could do something like that in the future.
Great. Thank you so much, Steve. Jean, any new business?
No.
Sheena?
None.
Kim?
Nope.
All right. Moving on to our last agenda item for the evening. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So motion.
Second.
We'll take a vote, starting with Steve.
Yes.
Jean.
Yes.
Sheena.
Yes.
Kim.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.